In what could be considered a late October surprise, today's breaking story shows that a non-battleground state, a traditional red state that was all but conceded to Donald Trump, is now in play for Kamala Harris. This according to a surprising poll released in that state, and I have the story for you next. Before I reveal the state that the Harris campaign is surely chomping its election bit over, let's take a look at the latest polling that I could find. And when discussing polling, I like to draw from at least two sources because we know that polling is not an exact science. So here's ABC and NBC with the latest. One shows slightly more red and one shows slightly more blue.
And what do the latest polling averages tell you about these 7 states that are most likely to determine the presidency?
Absolutely, Diane. According to the averages, Harris and Trump are tied in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada, while Trump has a very slim lead by about a point or two in North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia. With a race this close, though, it shouldn't surprise us if either candidate ends up sweeping all 7 of the battleground states on election night. It could really, at this point, go either way.
So here we are. This is the national race 1 week out. This is the snapshot.
And we say it's close, but I think one thing to keep in mind, too, is remember the last 2 elections when Donald Trump ran looked very different at this point. So Harris with an advantage nationally now on average of 1.1 points over Trump. 4 years ago, on this day, the national poll average was Joe Biden by 7.4 points. Look at that difference. Go back to 2016. On this day, Hillary Clinton's advantage was 4.6. So the polling has just been much tighter this time around for a long time now.
There were polling misses in 2016 and 2020, so we'll see how much of a differential that is. Let's look at the battlegrounds. We vote by electoral college. Yep. This is where the votes really count. Show us about these swing states.
Yeah, and I mean, you could just see how tight they are. We have the candidate who's ahead sort of here, but the margins are so slim. One thing to think about, though, look at the 3 where Harris does have a small advantage. If she does hold Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, if there's no surprise anywhere else, she will have exactly 270 electoral votes. And from Trump's standpoint, to show you how tight this is, look, the poll right now has him, the average has him slightly ahead in North Carolina, slightly ahead in Georgia. If he gets those 2, all he would need to get exactly 270 is to change Pennsylvania, where the average right now is just 0.6 of 1 point to Harris. Do that, and Trump has exactly 270.
Well, that explains why the candidates have been parked in Pennsylvania for the last couple of months for the most part.
So what is the red state that might be in play? A state that was ignored in both of those reports and has been virtually ignored by both campaigns? The state that has 6 electoral votes, a number that, as you just saw, could swing the election? I was alerted to this breaking story by a post from MSNBC commentator Tristan Snell that read, "Breaking, Trump only winning by 5 in Kansas." And he went on to optimistically theorize that the trend has larger implications. If Trump's margin is only 5 in Kansas, he is losing in Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, and Arizona, and Florida, and Texas. The source of the poll was revealed in a Newsweek article with the headline that read, "Shock poll says Kamala Harris within striking distance of Trump in Kansas." The poll, conducted by Fort Hays State University between September 26 and October 16, found that Trump is only 5 points ahead of Harris in Kansas, a state that has consistently leaned Republican by wide margins in past presidential elections. The article went on to say that no Democratic candidate has won Kansas since Lyndon Johnson 60 years ago, and that Trump won there by 21 points in 2016 and 15 points in 2020. And it suggested that residents differing with Trump on abortion and feeling pretty good about the economy has contributed to his decline there. So I have 2 thoughts about this story. First, what a shame that at this moment in time, we have never had more news outlets, but they all hyper-focus on and repeat the same narratives. And if you believe the swing state narrative, there is only 7 states that will decide the election. This, despite the fact that the polls have done poorly in forecasting the results of the last 2 elections. And second, if people do overconsume these narratives and they are repeatedly told that their state is not in play directly or indirectly, they may be less likely to vote. And that could prevent outcomes that no one saw coming, and it will negatively impact down-ballot voting on all the other important state and local elections and propositions. And now I want to know what you think. To mix metaphors, do you think this news represents a tip of the Harris iceberg and signals a blue wave like Snell does? Or do you think it's wishful thinking and the media pundits who continue to beat the same drum are accurate in saying just the battleground states will decide who our next president is? Please comment below, and either way, let's continue to occupy democracy together by enthusiastically exercising our right to vote.